What we're going to be basically doing is making a transparent picture so you can add it to like a portfolio and just make the image a lot cleaner. So by clicking the folder icon, you can make sure that it's saved to the correct folder, and if you want to make it PNG, make sure that the file is PNG, and then also have it to RGBA so that it's transparent. And in film, make sure it is also transparent. If you have a background that you want to use, all you have to do is disable transparent and then switch from RGBA to RGB. Next, we're going to head over to render properties and then performance, final render, and then persistent data, and check that. And what this does is increase memory and make a faster render. And then if you have a complex tube or rope or wire geometry, what you can do is go to acceleration structure and use curves BVH to make it faster. Next, we're going to go over to the denoise nodes and the compositor and make sure that both of these devices are GPU, and what this will do is make the denoising and the compositing much faster, as well as having just fast quality, so you can actually make both of these settings fast. Next, we're going to enable simplify and then click simplify, then viewport render, then max subdivision and set it to around 6 to reduce the subdivisions for simpler models. We'll also make sure to set a texture limit of 248 for the viewport and 496 for the render. Next, we're going to select culling and enable camera culling, and then go to object properties and go to visibility and enable camera culling while holding down Alt or Option. And basically what this does is it hides these objects when they're not in the camera to make it easier to render big scenes. Next, we're going to light paths and max bounces and set it to 5 to limit light bouncing for less light calculation, and we're also going to enable fast GI approximation just for faster lighting. We're then going to go to sampling and then lights and click light tree and disable it to reduce calculation for multiple lights. By clicking denoise and enabling GPU, we can essentially denoise with GPU to make it faster. We also want to click quality and pre-filter and make sure they're fast. And then in render, have a minimum samples of 100 and a maximum samples of 100. And you're basically going to replicate what you did for render settings for the viewport, with the exception of the samples being 1, so that way you can preview it a lot faster. And what samples does is it basically just layers the imaging, and by having a high noise threshold, it can cover up some of the mistakes with the sacrifice of some of the detail. And then you're just gonna choose your render engine and make sure it cycles, because it's much more realistic, though it's slower. And then for device, we're gonna use GPU compute because GPU is faster. And then click file, defaults, and save startup file. And this will basically save it as a preset for the next time you want to start a project. So make sure to separate the robot and the lighting into 2 different collections. I'll have robot as purple and lighting as yellow. So let's go ahead and add a light point, and then we're going to hide the robot collection, and then go to lighting and go to the object data properties, and that's where we're going to manipulate the light point. So for a single point, it basically just casts light kind of like an LED. For radius, more radius means softer shadows. For exposure, more exposure means exponentially scales the power, and for power, more power just means more light. Let's move on to the sun. So it's better for even lighting like the sun, and for strength, it just means more light. Spot, it's basically a cone of light, and you can cast it over an area. And for radius, more radius is softer shadows. For spot size, more spot size is a larger area of light, and more blend is softer cone edges. Area is shaped lighting and can take the form of a square, rectangle, disc, which is a circle, ellipse, which is an oval, and the size number determines the size of the shape. So a higher size number is bigger shape, and higher spread is less focus. So go to world properties and press X to remove the world lighting and remove it, and then open it up and insert an HDRI, and you can use Blenderkit to find a ton of HDRIs that people make, and what they are is just world lighting that's very specific to only that HDRI. Let's close the lighting collection and open up the robot and make sure it's in frame, and then go over to the shading tab, and this is where we'll do all our texturing. Make sure to switch from solid mode to shading mode in the top right. Here I'm just adjusting the shading tab to how I like it, and you can do the same if you want to. So I'm just using GoBuilda as an example here, and this is the standard part vendor, and we're looking for the Sonic Hub material. So I'm just scrolling down here and it says the material is aluminum, and also pay attention to the finish, which is clear anodized. Here are the typical materials that I usually find in a robot. So brushed aluminum and rubber are the most common, as well as smooth plastic, steel, and foam. Press Shift L, and then you can either press material or object, and it'll select the linked materials, and this depends on the CADing software you use and how you assign materials. An object is just selecting the same objects, and then you can press Shift H in order to isolate only those. Now we're going to assign the material by going on the search bar and finding the materials. I'll leave a link down below to the starting file, and I have it in every single episode, and this will have all the materials that I use. And press Command L to link the materials once you have one object with the selected material. Here I'm just going over how to download Poliigon and Blenderkit, and Poliigon is mostly paid, so I prefer Blenderkit. It has many more features such as materials, HDRIs, and models. So go over to Edit and then Preferences and Add-ons and search for Blenderkit or Poliigon and just make sure they're enabled. Here I'm just going over how to navigate the Poliigon and Blenderkit interface, and as you can see here, Blenderkit offers models, HDRIs, and materials. So here I'm just adding the robot number and switching the Decal UV to UV map. That way it's the same as in the data properties. And if you want to modify this, you can use your own team's number and just open up the image PNG and insert it. So now we need to adjust the UV map to make sure it fits the sign. So we're going to go over to UV editing, and then we're going to select the sign and the UV map, and we're going to press G then S to scale it down so that way it fits it, and then we're going to rotate it around the y-axis to make sure it's the right orientation. And then after that we're going to select the entire front side and then inverse select it, so that way we select all the other points, because the UV map actually wraps around the entire object. And what we're going to do is we're going to merge it at the cursor, so that way it only shows the number on the front side of the sign. So for the final step, we're going to be taking a render of the robot. In order to do that, we're going to need a camera. So I have one in this collection, and I'm going to use that and go over to layout and adjust the camera. So here I'm just going over and seeing if the render engine is fine, like cycles, ensuring that the PNG is RGBA. If you want to have a transparent photo, you also want to make sure it's set on to transparent. And then you're also going to want to make sure that the sampling is alright. So go over to your render and check. I usually use 100, so you can use that as well. And then after all that's said and done, you can press render and then render the image. Yeah, that's it for today. We learned render settings, lighting, textures, and in the next video we're gonna learn moving objects, animation settings, camera animation, and object animation. If you need any help, we have our email down below, or you can leave a comment. And with that all being said, this is 14525 TerraBlend signing out.